Good day, everybody. Zack here, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about motorcycles as we ride. Our guest today is the Triumph Tiger Sport 800. That is an upright and sporty motorcycle with an 800cc three-cylinder engine, weighs about 475 pounds with a full tank of gas, and it costs a little under $13,000. Now, this whole idea of a sort of tall but sporty motorcycle is not exactly new. You could even accuse the Tiger Sport 800 of being a little bit generic, but for the fact that it is a new bike and it does check some boxes that other machines simply don't. So I think the question here is not so much what the bike is supposed to be, but how it actually behaves. Where does it land on the scale of exciting versus practical or sporty versus comfortable? Nothing like a ride to work to talk about it, right? Let's go, everybody! Alrighty, everybody, here we go on the Tiger Sport 800 Daily Rider. Before we do, a quick reminder that this video is brought to you by RevZilla, which is beyond just the YouTube channel that you're watching, but also an e-commerce platform that sells apparel and accessories for motorcycles and people who love them. So the next time you need something for you or your bike, when you spend money at RevZilla on tires or seats or mirrors or a cover or oil or jacket or helmet or saddlebags or whatever, a little bit of that money goes into making some of this YouTube content. And for that, we say thank you. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching. All right, so Tiger Sport 800. This is a 798cc triple. Now, there are a lot of triples in Triumph's lineup. There's a 660, there's a 765, and now there's an 800, and there's a 900, and there's a 1200. There previously was an 800 because there was a Tiger 800 adventure bike, and there was also previously a 675, famously in the Daytona and other variants of Triumph. This is a pretty new engine, actually. It is based on the same architecture as the 660 and 765 variants, and it has the same 120-degree firing order, so it sounds like a standard Triumph triple from years ago or a Yamaha MT-09, something like that. It's not just a 765 engine pulled from the current street triple. It shares the same shape and cases, I think, but has different connecting rods. It has a different crank, it has different pistons, it has a unique cylinder head for this model line that has different ports and larger valves, I believe. It is quite a bit different as a power plant. It acts and feels pretty similar to Triumph triples in the past, but it is technically a new engine with a more pointed approach to this type of bike. The rest of the architecture of the bike is pretty recognizable in general. A steel tube trellis frame, Showa upside down fork. I believe these are Jejuan calipers grabbing these front rotors here, steel braided lines, which is always a nice feature. And aside from that, it's got this pretty obvious and prominent wind protection up front and a little bit of cowling on it, but it's a pretty simplistic design. Some pretty tall bar risers here up from the top triple clamp to put the handlebar at a fairly high spot in the cockpit, which we'll talk about more later, of course. It does look pretty similar to the Tiger Sport 660, very similar styling. This bike does have some upgraded componentry, though, the suspension among them. It also has a more sophisticated intake and throttle body setup than the 660 and slightly different exhaust, as you'll see. But, similar shape to the seat, similar shape to the riding position, and obviously the styling and stuff is reminiscent to keep that family bond there. I think, though, without giving away too many spoilers here, it is more different in feel than it is in looks or on the spec sheet. So buckle up. I'm looking forward to this daily ride, actually. I think this is, in many ways, a bike that was designed to satisfy exactly what we're looking for on this show. A little bit of versatility, a little bit of excitement, and a heavy dose of practicality and sort of usability. So what else do we need to know here? A couple things I'll point out. One is the saddlebag mounts, and we'll talk a little bit more about luggage later. Here are the sort of integrated mounts as you see on bikes these days. Also, you can take a look at the seat shape. It is a single piece seat. Yeah, not super fancy, as you can tell. The thing I want you to look at when it comes time to talk about passenger accommodations is the size of this seat here, and then the size of this seat here, and all the room that exists between the back of the gas tank and the front of the passenger seat, which is both good and bad, as we will talk about later. All right, I think we're just about ready here. Yeah? You ready? I'm ready. Let's flick on the key here. And this fairly simplistic, not quite two-color dash, but pretty simple basic dash here. And we will fire up this Triumph, and we will hold in the clutch because Triumph makes you do that for some reason. There you have it. The tiger's growl. I bet no one's ever made that joke before. Okie doke. Here we go. 798 cc's of technically new engine wrapped up in technically new bodywork, trying to satisfy an age-old desire to be stimulated by your machine, but also comfortable. Off we go, everybody. Quick rundown of the specs here. I mentioned the 798cc engine a couple of times. Power output, I'll cut right to the chase, 113 claimed horsepower, 62 foot-pounds of torque. The seat height is listed at 32.7 inches, which is just on the high side of average, I would say. 6'2" with a 34-inch inseam. I can flat foot both feet like so. So the seat height reads a little high, but it's pretty narrow in the waist, fairly accommodating from the cockpit, I would say. The fuel tank is a hefty 4.9 gallons of fuel, and when it was full on the Daily Rider scales, it weighed in at 476 pounds. So not exactly a featherweight, but a decent amount of gas on board. The whole package, as of the publishing of this video, the Caspian blue version of this motorcycle, which will cost you an extra 150 bucks for anything other than gray and black, is listed on the Triumph website as $12,645. Pretty, if not predictable, maybe kind of average numbers, right? Not super expensive, not super cheap, not super light, not super heavy. It's a middle of the road kind of bike. Oh, what the heck? Our ramp is closed. Rats. Means it's a detour day for Zack. So we don't have our usual highway on-ramps to talk about ergonomics, but what the bike feels like to sit on is probably pretty much what you're expecting. It's pretty much bolt upright. It has, I would say, a sort of adventure bike type feeling to it, except for the seat and foot pegs. Foot pegs are a little higher and a little farther back than you might expect from a sort of classic ADV style riding position, which makes sense because this bike is 17-inch wheels and it's supposed to be a little bit sportier. And the seat is maybe a little bit narrower and less engineered than you'd expect. There's nothing really wrong with it, except that I feel like there was probably a Triumph engineer who said, we should make the seat better. And then another one that said, pipe down. This is about making a bike that's affordable and reasonable. It's all going to be one piece. Don't get carried away. All things considered, pretty comfy place to sit. Not a lot of complaints. Good for touring, good for around town, and even good for some twisties. Speaking of which, it's the one benefit of detour day on the highways. You get to hit the... okay. Not too much fun, everybody. All right, here we go. We're rolling a little bit faster now, 70 miles an hour. And I can tell you that this little windscreen setup is pretty darn good. Pushes air away from my torso. It's even adjustable if I pull up on this handle here. It's a bunch of different settings in there, but I usually just either go fully up or fully down. It's a little bit louder in my helmet with the windscreen up. I'll say overall, I just don't think that the aerodynamics or the wind protection setup is even close to perfect. I do appreciate that it has so much adjustability. I appreciate that it's so easy, and the airflow is fairly clean. There's not like a ton of turbulence or anything like that. But I do find myself wishing that the lower setting was even lower so that my helmet was left in clean air, or alternatively that the high setting was even higher so that it would cover more of my helmet instead of air hitting me right above the chin bar and creating kind of this little vibration and turbulence around my ear holes. I don't find it particularly satisfying personally, but I appreciate the engineering, and it's undeniably good wind protection for a bike that ostensibly does not have a ton of bodywork on it and kind of optically is pretty small. So Triumph, I think, gets a kind of a gold star from that perspective, even if I don't love it. Now, if you end up sharing my lukewarm feelings about the windscreen and wind protection in general, of course, you can play around the aftermarket. But even if you don't, it's sort of undeniable that this bike is good at munching miles. It will just chug along like this all day. The engine is nice and smooth. It has a 4.9 gallon tank, and I got mileage in the 40s, which means you're probably going to go the better part of 200 miles, if not more than 200 miles, depending on how you ride. As far as how much, you know, capability Triumph mixed into the recipe of this bike, it's a lot, and they deserve a tip of the cap for that, I think. There's also cruise control, which you tap once to turn on, and then you tap again and it turns green, and now we've set the cruise control and we're cruising. It's a little bit unsophisticated in so much as you can't adjust speed up and down while you're riding, which doesn't seem like it would have been that hard to do. And then when you shut the cruise off, like I just pulled in the clutch and I killed the cruise, so now we're decelerating, it leaves this orange light on, which is not technically a problem. As you know, you just know that the cruise control has been selected. Oop, I stalled the bike. Good job, Zach. I have heard owners complain that, like, I wish I could just shut that light off. Why can't I just make it go away? And I kind of get that, because who wants to ride along with what looks like a warning light on there, right? Mirrors, you ask? Quite good. Very good mirrors. Like them. Placed well, sturdy, strong, smooth, easy, good, forgettable mirrors, as they should be. Okay, into the neighborhood section. I'm going to push the windscreen all the way back down again, and we will try for some footless stops here and see how the round town manners are of Tiger Sport 800. I've got high hopes. Oh geez, I think that counts, but it's a little bit clumsy. Well, as I often say, my bad hair day doesn't need to condemn this motorcycle, which I think is quite good around town. It is tall-ish, and if you are short-ish, you might find it to feel tall and feel a little bit heavy. I don't think that it feels particularly heavy. I think for a 470 something pound bike, I think it feels more like 445, 450, which I mean as a compliment, of course. It's, you know, very light on its feet at this speed, but even coming off the kickstand and pushing around my driveway or whatever, I just don't find the weight to be intimidating or obtrusive in any way. So I hope that you would find the same, and the rest of the bike follows suit. I think that the clutch feels great. I think the fueling is quite good. That's a Triumph trademark. I think the transmission's good. There's not a lot to complain about in these environments. The clutch lever is not adjustable for, you know, range like the brake lever is. It's, you know, like arguably a cost-cutting measure there, but I don't know, pretty hard to be ticked off about that. This doesn't really affect the ride very much as far as I'm concerned, unless you have particularly small or large hands. So yeah, I think it works quite well in these environs and follows the marketing material around 3-cylinder engines, which is that, you know, it's the torque of a twin and the horsepower of a 4-cylinder, whatever, you know, the whole mumbo jumbo. It's very smooth, accommodating, and put together in these environments, which makes sense. Triumph's been making these triples for a long time now. And I won't say they've perfected the recipe, but I would say they're closer than most. You're ready, off we go. I honestly sometimes find myself caught out a little bit by how powerful the engine is and how strong the engine is, because when I sit in the cockpit, when I look at something like the non-adjustable clutch lever, when I sit on the seat that is slightly unrefined, I slip into a mindset of kind of like, yeah, this is a budget bike, you know? And then I roll the throttle on and so I'm like, whoa, yeah, it's not a budget engine, that's for sure. All right, last stop sign. Let's see if you can finish with a bang here. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one. And a good way to cap off the urban section of the daily rider route, because this is a good bike around town. I do think it will feel a little tall to some folks, but if you have a inseam or riding experience or strength that the bike does not feel intimidating to you, I think that you're going to find it to be a real treat in environments like this. Andale tigre. Okay, we can set cruise control on the lover's lane, and I can slide back onto this passenger seat. I slid back about 8 inches, and I'm not even on the passenger seat. I have maybe 5 or 6 inches of seat in front of me. I'm still on the rider's seat. So when you go back to the passenger seat, it feels way far back. Way far back. And I think that passengers in general are going to be wanting to sit closer to the rider, and there's going to be a big gap and it's going to be weird. That's what I think. But I will say that aside from the foot pegs being a little bit wide set on the passenger perch, pretty comfy. It's not bad. And I think that's good news, because I reckon that plenty of Tiger Sport 800 owners will want to put a passenger on the back at some point. If you splurge on that top box that Triumph sells, they'll even have a backrest. So maybe they won't care about sitting so close to you. All right, so here we are in the Twisty Road section, the sport section of the Tiger Sports repertoire. And you should expect the Tiger Sport to be pretty darn good at this stuff. I often talk about how adventure bikes that are upright, or maybe even have a 21-inch or 19-inch front wheel, are really good sport touring bikes, and they're perfectly capable of winding through roads like this. And they are. When you ride a bike like this, it's even more pointed, and you get the sort of benefit and comfort of sitting upright, as well as the sort of agility and direct feel of a 17-inch front wheel and a sort of sporting chassis. Now, is it the best of both worlds entirely? Maybe not. Maybe you prefer an actual sport bike on an actually sporty road. But I think for most street riding scenarios, it is, yes, pretty much the best of both worlds. Speaking of adventure bikes, there goes Johnny Africa Twin, enjoying the Twisty Road with his 21-inch front wheel. There are arguably some cost-cutting measures in the Tiger Sport 800's recipe. The suspension is upgraded when compared to a Tiger Sport 660, but it's not quite as refined as a full-fledged sporting option in the Street Triple line, for example. I think it's quite good. I think it's sort of composed and reasonable, and if anything, the chassis is just a little bit outdone by the engine, which is a compliment. Maybe it's a backhanded one. You can charge into corners kind of faster than you might expect, because the engine is really quite powerful. Not that the chassis is not ready for it, I just don't think it's operating on quite the same level as the engine. And that's really the worst thing I can say about this bike. I find it really pleasant to ride, like upright, like a Kawasaki Versys or other adventure styled bikes, but kind of pointed and purposeful like a Sport Naked. It's a really nice combination. Now let's experiment a little bit with that engine that I was just talking about. We'll punch it here in second gear. It's really strong. We're gonna punch down with the quick shifter, and we'll grab a handful of brake here. The brakes are really good. The ABS, which just kicked in, feels a little bit unrefined for a Triumph. And maybe Triumph's idea with this motorcycle is that it's not beginner, but intermediate level motorcycle, and it's not supposed to be quite as sharp edged, and the electronics aren't supposed to be quite as advanced. But I think the ABS could just be a little bit more lenient, in my opinion. Right, one more red light here. We're gonna cozy up behind this Camry and talk a little bit about the dash. The dash will be kind of familiar to those who have ridden the sort of lower price rung Triumphs in the past few years. You got this, oh, hello, Camry U-turn. Fair enough. You got this sort of two-color dash, two-color tachometer here with the speedo and fuel gauge. And then this multicolor screen down here, which you can flip through with this four-way pad here, and see different pieces of information, including an enormous coolant gauge, as well as an enormous tachometer digitally, if that's what you're interested in. You can also hit the check mark when you get to main menu and jump in here to do riding modes, trip setup. You can connect via Bluetooth to the Triumph app, as is tradition in the motorcycle industry these days. One kind of cool thing you can do is, if you go into road, you can make TC sport mode in road riding mode, if that makes sense. You can sort of like juggle some of the settings a little bit, which Ducati is really good at in general historically. Triumph seems to be adopting some of that mantra, which I think is a good idea. Other notes on the dash I should mention: I don't love it in general. It's intuitive enough to use. I wish I could just kind of program my own screen to show what I want to see. And I did have an owner message me on social media and say, this bike seems intent on telling me what day it is. And you can see it says it's August 14th. And if I go down a few, it'll also say August 4th. Oh no, sorry. It'll tell us when the next service is due. And I thought that was a funny note. I have noticed this on Triumph dashes before, that the date is quite prominent, and I don't want it. I don't understand it, and I think it would make sense if you could program your own setup here, and you could decide if you want to see ambient air temperature or trip 1, say, and a clock, and not the date, or something like that. As far as I know, that isn't something you can do. In general, I find the dash to be functional, but a little bit underwhelming, especially considering how good the rest of the bike is. Now, would you buy the Tiger Sport 800 just for the engine, as we often ask in this section of the ride? I could see that, yeah. It's not an entirely unique power plant within the class, right? You can get a Yamaha Tracer 9 that has a big old 3-cylinder engine, similar size, similar character. I do think this engine's better, and if someone said I got the Triumph triple because I think Triumph's better at triples than anyone else, I would say, yeah, good call. But in general, I think it's really more the overall package that makes this bike what it is. Now, it's not entirely unique package from a Tracer 9, I don't think, but I think the way that it's put together, the optics around it, the simplicity of some of the build is noteworthy. And maybe because all of that stuff points to the capability of the engine and makes the engine the sort of crown jewel of the experience, makes me appreciate the model for what it is, maybe more so than any other bike in the class. The Triumph Tiger Sport 800 is supposed to be in the same vein as a BMW XR model, right? Or the Yamaha Tracer 9 we mentioned. It's supposed to be a sort of sporty, performance-oriented bike that is also tall and upright and comfortable. Where it falls is kind of interesting. I think that it is a lot sportier and more capable than people are going to give it credit for, because I think the optics around the bike, there is some sort of like rawness and simplicity about the bike, which is great, but it's hemmed in by that a little bit. It also will make people think that it is a little bit vanilla, a little bit boring maybe. And I think that's both unfair and kind of a compliment, right? The balance between sporting capability and practicality / comfort is always going to leave one person or another, or one group or another, slightly disappointed or feeling hard done. I think this bike kind of hits the nail on the head as far as blending excitement and comfort without breaking the bank or being too extravagant, and I almost feel like it's going to be condemned for that, which is too bad. I hope Triumph sells a boatload of them. When people get on board and ride it, they're going to really, really like it, and they're going to be addicted to the capability and the energy that it brings to a ride. Now, it does have Tiger in the name, but also has Sport in the name, which means it's not really for riding in the dirt, but of course we're going to give it a try anyway. So we're going to fiddle with ride modes. I'm going to tap here and you can go road, sport, or rain. Simple enough. I'm going to put it in rain. By the way, I kind of wish there was like a... Does the dash ever tell me what mode I'm in? Unless I hit the thing? That'd be nice. Alright, let's try rain, traction control, and throttle response, which is... Throttle response is extra smooth. Whoop. Whoops, my shoelace. Woohoo! Yep. Nice and conservative, as you would expect in raid mode, which is fine. So let's go back to, well, actually, we'll just go to sport, which will be slightly more lenient. Okay. Ooh, yeah, much snappier. Still extremely conservative. Traction control. Watch, we'll roll it open here. Sort of allows you to accelerate. Sort of, kind of. Just for the heck of it, let us go to the menu. Bike setup. TC. Disabled. I'm going to go back to road mode, and it should stick. Yeah. TC should stick off, which is good. And we'll spin it up here a little bit. Jesus. Yeah, ABS is just like not as quite as lenient as I want it to be. This reminds me of why I never really liked the Tiger 800 adventure bike that Triumph had years ago with the 800cc triple. Different engine calibration, blah blah blah. But same kind of attitude, which was just, is a better road engine than it was an off-road engine. I think this size triple, and especially in this calibration that it is here, works best on a 17-inch wheel bike that's made for some sporting potential rather than an on-off-road bike. I think Triumph's done the right thing going away from this engine, as we just learned. Kind of spicy when you're off-road. All right, let's see if it'll do a wheelie, huh? Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Very, very good for wheelies. Speaking of hooliganism, can you back it in? Not particularly well. You can dump the clutch and it'll do a little chirp, chirp, chirp. But the ABS is not particularly adjustable, and generally seems like Triumph doesn't want you to do that, which is too bad because Triumph really pioneered the whole oh Jesus. There we go, we got a little one. The whole, you know, slippery ABS thing years ago. They had circuit mode on the 675 Daytona that was so good, and so I'm a little sad to see it be so kind of reined in. As for the U-turn challenge, we don't have enough parking spaces. I'm gonna go this line here. We're gonna fake it till we make it. We're gonna go full lock left, feet up. Yeah, just about 2 parking spaces, maybe a little more. Good bike overall. I hope that's come through. In general, it's a really good motorcycle. I don't find a lot of misses here. Kickstand does stick out a little bit, doesn't it? Does it need to stick? Could it be like in a couple inches? Okay, I'm really just looking for things to complain about at this point. Let's listen to this engine one more time, shall we? Yeah, quick to rev too. It doesn't have I bet that Triumph knew that the engine wasn't going to be purposed in the dirt, aside from this daily rider. And so it made it a little bit quicker to rev and a little bit sportier than maybe previous 800 triples were, and I think that's a good thing. Okay, let's see what you all want to know. First question I'm going to answer here is from Adam Goldstein. Adam asks, is it more Tiger or more comfy street triple? The short answer is it's a comfy street triple. It's of course not the same engine. It's not all the same componentry. It has the Tiger name, but it is more street triple than Tiger in my estimation and feel from the saddle. Adam also asked to break down the Triumph family of engines, which I think we did in the beginning. Hopefully that was satisfactory. The big takeaway there is that the 660, the 765, and this 800 engine are standard firing order triples, sound the way this bike sounds. The 900 triple and the 1200 triple are T-plane crank, which are built with a different purpose in mind. They feel different, they sound different. I believe I did a Tiger Sport 850 review a couple years ago on Daily Rider, and that engine will be audible in that review, if you like. Next question is from 1220 Mark, who says, tangent, do you think they're going to come out with a Trident 800? Right. There was the Trident 660, which is a sort of small retro-styled sport naked with the 660 triple in it. And then there was the Tiger Sport 660, which is much like this bike except the 660 engine, as I talked about before. So this Tiger Sport 800 coming out does make you wonder, doesn't it, Mark? Is Triumph going to come out with a retro-styled 800cc naked bike with this engine in it? As of the recording of this video, there are spy photos out there of what looks to be a Trident 800 happening. I do feel like Triumph might step on their own toes a little bit with a street triple and a Trident 800, but of course the styling will be different, and I'm sure the marketing will be different, and perhaps it'll go after a different demographic, but it's already slicing things real thin there with the modern classics that Triumph has, like a Speed Twin 1200 or a Speed Twin 900, and then a Trident 800, and then it would be a different bike. It would be, but I'll be interested to see how that shakes out. Good question, Mark. Next question is from SimSimSXC. I know how much Zack loves the Versys 650. Arguably, the engine is the worst part of the Kawasaki Versys 650. Is the Tiger Sport 800 better? Yeah, so it is. The engine is better in this bike than it is in the Versys 650. One thing I need to call out is that the Versys 650 is a, what, $10,000 bike, $9,500 bike, something like that. This is a $13,000 bike, so, you're playing a little bit different scale. But I do think this question is interesting and worth answering because this bike seems to me to be built around the engine. Triumph has a lot of kind of faith and adoration, I think, for its mid-size 3-cylinder engines, rightly so. I think they've done a good job, maybe not perfecting them, but making them awfully, awfully good. And this bike seems to be the answer to the question, what if you made this engine that everyone seems to like so much, both practical and sporty? So I think this bike is built around the engine, that is to say. And I think the Kawasaki Versa 650 is a package that was put together and they used an engine that they had to power it. And it's not that it's an afterthought, but it's just, it's not as prominent a feature, and you can feel that when you ride the bike. And again, keep the price difference in mind. I think that's only fair. Next question is from David Braps, who says, you've got $500 to spend on accessories. What would you improve? Good question. Good question, David. Well, I wanted to cover a couple things here. One, I do heated grips, and I think that's like $200. It's only $260 or $300, something like that. We'll put the price on screen perhaps. But heated grips would be a great addition to this bike almost no matter where you live and ride. That wouldn't be quite $500. So what would I do with the rest of it? I don't know. So I'm going to pivot to a different part of the question. The luggage, I believe, is $600 and something, $640 maybe for the panniers, or $670, and then $400 or $500 for the top box, which allegedly holds 2 full-size helmets. So from what I've heard, the luggage is pretty good, and it's not crazy expensive. Even that Versa 650 we were talking about earlier, I think Kawasaki charges something like $1,000 or $1,100 for the GV bags that come with the Versus lineup and Ninja 1100 and even H2SX, blah, blah, blah. They're really nice saddlebags, but they're expensive. These saddlebags I've heard are pretty nice, not as expensive. So I think that's worth calling out. So I could spend basically all of my $500 on that top box, but I think what I would do is I'd spend part of it on the factory heated grips, which I imagine would be a nice upgrade. Next question is from Matt Dez 1080, who says, why would someone choose the Tiger Sport 800 over a Tiger 900 GT? Are the savings really worth the features stripped from the bike? This goes back to the first question I answered from my buddy Adam about, is it more Tiger or is it more comfy street triple? Of all the differences that there are, it's a completely different engine. Tiger 900 is T-plane crank. It's a dumbed down 19-inch front wheel adventure bike. This is pretty clearly a sort of sport bike skeleton, if you will, built up to be slightly more comfortable. Wheelbase measurements. I noticed that this bike has a 56 point something inch wheelbase, 56.6 or something maybe, whereas the Tiger 900 GT, 61 point something. So we're talking 5 inches difference in wheelbase. If you're not familiar with wheelbase numbers, that is a huge delta. And I'm not saying that the Tiger 900 GT isn't a good road bike, or it's like it can't go down a twisty road because it's too long and it's too heavy and it's too weird or whatever. But it goes to show that this is a compact package with sporting intent, and it's not just wheel size and engine characteristic, it's a whole lot more than that. They're really just completely different builds. If this bike being $2,000 or $2,500 cheaper or something like that, I think is like worth it to you, I don't know. I think they're different products, enough so that you're not going to want both of them. You're going to want one or the other. Hopefully that helps more than it hurts there, Matt. Last question here is from Desert Chris 1, who says, with a name like Tiger, I would hope it has a growl. Hey, Chris, I already made that joke. Relax. So if it was a feline, which one would it be? Right, which cat? Is it a tiger or is it some other? What this bike makes me think of is this like nature show thing. It's called like The Hunt. Was it Netflix or something maybe? Anyway, they featured this cat that lives in the African savannah. It's kind of a cute looking cat. So it got these like big hind legs, and you're sort of thinking that's a weird shaped cat. I'm not really sure what's going on. And the way that it hunts is it like a bird flies by and it jumps like some crazy amount of feet in the air, and it hooks the bird out of the air and it drags it down and it eats it. That's kind of this bike in a nutshell. You could accuse it being a little bit generic, right? Like I said in the beginning, you could say like, whatever, it just kind of looks like a Yamaha concept bike, or I don't even, what is it anyway? Who knows? I had to like read the name on the side to see that it was a Triumph. I don't really see any design language here, but it hits, man. It's not just a sort of like cute generic feline face. It has some capability lurking. I hope it does not go underappreciated, is what I'm saying. Just like most cats have some killer instinct built into them there. But that African Savannah cat with the big jump and the hind legs, that's the one, I tell you. That's the one that this bike is. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for sticking around. Thanks for all your great questions. Hang out just a minute longer. We're going to put the sucker on the Daily Rider leaderboard, and then I'll let you go, I promise.
Okie dokie, everybody. Here we are at the Daily Rider leaderboard. Starting to fill out here. Here we are more than halfway through 2025. We got a nice slew of bikes up here, and we got the Triumph Tiger Sport 800 ready to go. As a friendly reminder, as always, of what's at the top of the board here, we do have the Honda CB 750 Hornet with a smiley face, as well as the CF Moto Ibex 450 adventure bike and the Husqvarna Svartpillen 801 naked twin bike thingy. Triumph Tiger Sport 800, where do you think it falls? Pretty good daily rider, right? I think a bike it reminds me a lot of actually is the KTM 890 SMT or Supermoto Touring, which also got a smiley face along with the CB750 Hornet this year. Really good daily rider and really struck a chord with me. I thought that bike was super fun, dynamic, interesting, powerful. I think the Tiger Sport 800 isn't quite as good as that bike. It would probably fall down here somewhere. That's still pretty high ranking in the 2024 board. So on the 25 board, I do think the Triumph Tiger Sport 800 is going to be above the Svartpilen 801 because of that versatility and comfort, which the Tiger Sport takes up a notch, I think. So Ibex 450 versus Tiger Sport 800. Gosh, that's a tough one. There isn't a lot you can do with a Tiger Sport 800 that you cannot with an Ibex 450. Well, track day or something like that. The Tiger Sport 800 is just, I just think it's a better bike than the Ibex 450. I think it's more bike. It's a bigger engine, it's more horsepower, it's slightly more premium foundational structure. It's twice the money, practically. So it's gonna fall above that bike. Honda CB750 Hornet versus Tiger Sport 800. On the topic of versatility, Tiger Sport 800, very versatile. You know, as far as like highway touring, luggage, saddlebags, city, sport, track day stuff, you know? More versatile than the CB750, I think, and more powerful. And the CB750 is a great deal at $8,000, and this bike's a little more premium at something like 13. Here's what it comes down to for me. The CB750 Hornet does not have the same versatility as the Tiger Sport 800, but I think overall it is a better package, right? Is it a better package? I'm gonna put the magnet on the board. Triumph Tiger Sport 800 not quite edging out the CB750 Hornet because I think the CB750 just is so put together. I think it's so fun. I think the engine is surprisingly high quality and sounds good and feels good and works well, and the chassis just was really so much better than I was expecting. I feel bad in some ways that I'm condemning the Tiger Sport 800 in the same way that I worried people would, which is sort of to be like, well, it's a great bike, it checks all these boxes, but it maybe doesn't light my fire as much as a Svartpilen 801 or a CB750 Hornet. But I think that's kind of the case. Those little misses that it has, whether it's the dash or the price or like little stuff like that, the CB750 Hornet does not miss. Second place on the Daily Rider leaderboard, not a bad spot to fall, I mean, being that I invented this whole thing, I think it's really worth a lot to be second place on the Daily Rider leaderboard. All right, have I talked long enough for you today? God, I hope so. I'm just like pretty much out of words and out of ideas for this bike and for this ride. Thank you so much for joining, as always. Appreciate your time, appreciate your questions, your clicks, your engagement. I do hope to see you next time on Daily Rider. In the meantime, ride safe. See you, everybody.